how to prune, how to do wildflowers, winter evergreens, all the things you do in the winter. That's what the classes will start over. This is autumn shrubs. Shrubs, mate, but I got a few more things and a few trivia things just because it's the last class. Thank you for being here. Some things that'll be of interest that'll kind of catch your interest. So I brought a couple samples from my gardens this morning. Went out and harvested a few things because if you're new to the area, you don't know what frost damage is. This is my tomato plant. Can you see that online too, just so you folks can see it? That is frost damage. It's not, I didn't do anything wrong. It's not a lack of water. It got below 32 degrees and it turns into this black mush. So I've got literally hundreds of tomatoes on the plant. They didn't freeze, just the foliage did. Foliage protected the fruit. And so probably tomorrow I'm going to go harvest all my tomatoes. I don't know what I'm going to do with all of them, but there's so many of them. Yes. Yeah, there we go. So I should have picked some and brought some in. Just dang it. I was just trying to focus on this, but that's what frost damage looks like. This is a potato vine. This thing was huge. It's a massive purple potato vine. You see in the new growth, and then you see this old growth. That's what that looks like. So you can kind of see you folks online. We know you're there. Thanks for tuning in. We'd rather see you here, but this is what that looks like. So new foliage, and then old foliage. A couple of my pepper plant looks just like the tomato. This is a gold potato vine. You can see it was bright. This thing's huge. It's like this big. And then it's got this tinge of black on top of it. So this is frost damage. This will be frosted out by the end of the week. This coming week, it'll all look like this. And there's nothing I can do to save it. It's not worth saving. It was an annual plant for $3.99. It turned into this massive thing. I've enjoyed it all season. Next year, I'll get another $3.99 or it'll be $4.49 or whatever inflation is going to do to us. So if we plant another one and call it all good, and it will turn into this massive thing again. So that's an annual. This is my zinnias. These have been spectacular. I mean, stunning. Last week, they were covered. And now zinnias are the wimpiest of all the annual plants. It turned brown. It didn't even turn black. It just vaporized for my eyes. That's frost damage again. Geraniums. Geraniums will go till about December or so. So they'll keep foliage up. They've kind of stopped blooming. See, there's a flower. It's got a few flowers on it, but you can see a little bit of, just nipped the top of it. And then it's got new growth coming on all at the same time. So geraniums are that way. I could trim this up and bring it indoors and save it all winter. It's that hardy, or I could probably even put it up next to the house and it might winter over. But let's show you folks online. This is a frosted foliage. And that's the new foliage. So this is I forget what variety this is. Anyway, it's this big around. It was so big it protected itself, but the top has a little bit of this frost damage showing up. Some folks go, oh, what did I do wrong? That's nature working against you, or it is autumn finally. We finally got down to 29 degrees, I think, at my house. It was pretty cold. That's what will happen. And then lastly, basil. I'm surprised basil didn't get hit, but you're seeing this black tinge around the edges. So that's frost, and then it's still pushing new foliage. So if I covered this, I might be able to get a little bit more basil out of it. Basically, harvest it, use it. It's not going to grow anymore. Take advantage, harvest all this stuff that's an annual and take advantage. It doesn't pertain to today's class, but you should be aware of what's going on. So especially my Phoenix, Palm Springs, Southern California folks, they've never seen frost before. Well, this is what it looks like. You should know there you go. Out of my own personal gardens this morning. Okay, now today's class is on shrubs. So I got a few things that look good. So let me tell you who I am. This is the last class of the fall season. We'll take a little hiatus through the holidays. We'll come back at it, I think January 14th. It's a wildflower class. So you do wildflowers in the winter. You seed those and they come up in the spring. So we're seasonally giving you the right things to do at the right time of year for here. And we'll do winter evergreens, how to prune, how to plant roses, all that whole spring season. We'll try to get those posted here in the next couple of weeks so you know what's coming up. But that's kind of the seasonality of what's going on. My name is Ken Lane. I am welcome you all. Glad you made it. Yeah. You're okay. So at least you're not online or long. So we had some folks just show up. They're 10 minutes. They're 7 minutes late. but at least they're here. There you go. Talk to the folks online. This is broadcast on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, LinkedIn. Kind of goes out everywhere where we touch folks in the community. It's amazing. We'll have 20 people sitting there watching online. I'm Ken Lane. I'm the owner of the Garden Center. I'm the second generation owner. My wife is downstairs. You see a real pretty blonde down there. That's my wife, Lisa. She is a Waters. And so I married one of Harold Waters. He's the founder. He founded this back in 1962. He had 4 daughters, and I took a liking to the youngest, I think prettiest daughter. And so now we're taking that, we're the second generation. We've been running this for 20 years. My daughter, my youngest daughter, Mackenzie, she's now training to take it to the third generation. So she's in training to take that over. She's very smart, just needs a few of the operational things like accounting, how to buy insurance, shop credit card fees, all that stuff you hate to do as a small business owner, but you have to know how to do it. So the plants come naturally. That's kind of our family history. We have farmed here. We have landscaped throughout the county for decades, since '62. In fact, the rumor is, I'm pretty sure it's about right, Harold Waters moved up here in the late 50s, had a station wagon and a shovel. He borrowed a wheelbarrow and started a landscape company. Pretty much that's the story he went with. And he's just been successful. First garden center to open in northern Arizona. Before there were some in Phoenix down off of Baseline Road. And there were some growers, but not retail, off of Miller Valley Road. There's a very famous geranium grower off of Miller Valley Road, just past where True Value is now. That was a lot of dairy agriculture back in the mid last century. That seems awkward to say, but that's the history we hear. And then Harold kind of went to work with him and then started to go, there's a need. The developers started to rally around him going, we need some plants. Would you help us? And so it just kind of has organically grown. And as the town grows, we grow with it. So we're still a small town. Even though we think we're big, we still have that small town flavor. But we've learned plants over the decades, what grows, what doesn't grow, what's more challenging, what's less challenging. And we're into there's basically, I call it 5 seasons. You've got your spring season, early spring, I would say almost 6 seasons. Early spring, there's from March through May, through middle of May. It's very frosty, it can snow, but it's very bright, very nice. It's beautiful. We go outside, we hike, we enjoy the outdoors, but it can still get cold. You need plants that can adapt to that. And so that's your early season vegetables like lettuce and broccoli and cauliflower. Your early season flowers like pansies, violas, dusty millers, snapdragons. Your early spring bloomers like forsythias, lilacs. They all love that bright days, cold nights. They bloom longer. The flavor comes out better. They bloom brighter when it's that season. So that March, and really Valentine's Day, somewhere it breaks. And it gets really nice through our last frost of the year. Typically, locals use Mother's Day as the last frost date. So they tend to like that season where it's frosty at night, bright during the day. Then we get into the actual spring season. That's May through really end of June. Those are your things that are just, there's pent up demand. I want my tomatoes planted. I need more peppers, squash, all those things that don't like frost. They'll vaporize if they see any kind of cold, but they really like that tempered day. So it's bright, it's not hot, but it's really nice out, and they just grow really fast. That's your roses typically come in then. I mean, we'll have 1,000 roses show up the end of April, just to leading edge of Mother's Day weekend, which those are gift kind of things. That's a spring type of item. Then you get into, I define June all by itself. I define it as perennial season. This is when all those flowers that come back year after year, this is when they're all in bloom. You got your largest selection, and the lower greenhouse is just packed full of perennials. They're big, they're bold, they typically take a lot longer to grow. Typically a perennial needs to be at least 2 years old to be able to bloom. That's why they're a little bit more expensive than, let's say, an annual, which typically takes 6-8 weeks to grow. This takes 18 to 36 months to grow. So it's just, you're holding on to them longer. So your big beefy peonies, those typically, they can take up to 5 years to grow. We'll have them at the farm for 5 years, especially the big Ito peonies. There's a real big like shrub variety. That one has to be pretty old before it's old enough to bloom. And people are shopping here, not for an Oedopeidae. They want one that's mature and they want it to bloom like now. I'm not willing to wait 3 years. I want it now. And so that's when your fruit trees typically go in the most, is right then at that spring season, so leading edge. But June is, they're all in bloom. You don't have to read any tags. You can just look at the flowers, smell it, and go, I like that one. So that's by itself. Then you got summer planting season. That's crepe myrtles, your butterfly bush, all those summer heat-loving things. Russian sage, that big purple spiky shrub about this high. That's when we have the most of them. We sell the most of them because they're so pretty. You've got one like this. I brought one up here. This is a summer bloomer, summer season. This is a potentilla, or potentella, double L's, potentilla. That's how we pronounce it in the Southwest. This one is deciduous. That is, it will lose its leaves in the winter. Here in the greenhouse, because it's just so pretty, we don't want it to fade yet. We just want, it's just so pretty. But within 10 days, this is going to turn gold, beautiful gold color. In the landscape, it gets about knee-high, kind of ball-shaped. The beauty of this is loves bright, hot sun, wind, a blow dryer. It likes you to curse at it, kick dirt at it, and it just thrives. It's very happy growing here, exposed to the ridge lines where that wind just always blows. This is going to do really well. And animals don't eat this. So javelina, deer, rabbits. It looks delicious, but they don't like to eat this. So it's a good plant. So commercial settings, this is what we go to. This is kind of one of our first ones. Start with that Russian sage, autumn sage, or Salvia greggii. We just go with those because they're so easy to grow. So this one's going to turn gold in color, and then it's going to be just these twigs. So it is a herbaceous perennial. That is, so some plants, some perennial means comes back every year. Some plants rest underground, and they hibernate there, and they come back fresh from the ground back up. So like, let's say this, well, I didn't really bring any real perennials. This one sort of does that. This is heuchera, or coral bells. It's a true perennial. It comes back every year. I've got some that are probably 10 years old. Keeps coming back. They get bigger and wider and fuller. But many times in a cold winter, it'll rest under the ground, so you won't see hardly anything about this. You almost forget where they're at. Peonies, you'll forget where they're at. But then they come back fresh. Some come back from their branch structure. This does not rest underground. Potentilla comes back from its actual stems, its branching. So there, it's going to lose all its foliage. You'll just see twigs coming up here and kind of go, I think I might like that. You almost forget where it's at. You'll leave it alone, fertilize it in March. It'll start to re-leaf, come back, start to bloom. It'll be re-leafed and back into bloom by the end of April, first part of May. And it just continually blooms right through now. So it's a great little plant for here. One little tip I can give you, my friends. Don't feel like you need to be in a hurry to prune things back. Once these, my SoCal folks, once it loses its leaves, they just want to prune it back and trim it. And they like Dr. Seuss looking things. Let it go wild, because that branch structure actually protects the heart of the plant and insulates it. So if we get a real hard winter, you never know, it comes back better for you. This is really important for brand new landscapes. They're just starting out. Let's say they've only been in for a year. Leave that foliage up, and that'll help protect and insulate the heart of that plant. So even if we go sub-zero, this plant will still come back for you. You might lose a few tips, but it still comes back. This is personal hard. This is my School of Hard Knocks. I pruned back my autumn sage once, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. Autumn sage, just one that's about this tall. It's a companion to this. It's about this tall with red flowers all over it. Hummingbirds just love it. I pruned it back too hard, exposed it to some cold. We had a real cold snap in February, killed it. Did not come back. Didn't even come back from the ground, just killed it flat out. If I just kept the foliage up there, it would have been fine. So now I don't feel like I'm in a hurry. I wait till really March, into February, March, I'll start pruning back some of these summery kind of things, summer plants. So this would be another one. Don't feel like you're in a hurry to just prune it real hard, okay? There's a whole nother class coming up in January on how to prune. this class is just to give you just a cue going, just because it lost its leaves doesn't mean I have to prune it yet. Plus, there's a lot of bugs. I brought a sample for you because Chris, our plant guy, said, Ken, we've got aphids on the live oaks. Should we be worried? I'm going, yeah, we should be worried. What are you talking about? You see tiny aphids right there? You can pass that around, kind of show it off, just so you know. Now, live oak is like a scrub oak or our native evergreen oaks. There's a couple others starting to show up. I think those are aphids. There's some aphids for sure. There's some aphids. You can kind of show those off. When you get done with those, just kind of throw them on the ground and step on them. I don't want them alive. So here, we're going to spray this probably. Just so you know, here, I'll take it for you. Here you go. I'll take it. Thank you. Oh, yeah, here we go for the folks on the camera. Here. I don't know. Tell me when it focuses in. Can you see that okay? Can you folks see that? That's hard. I know. There we go. Aphids. Aphids love, I'm going to throw those right there. They love autumn. They love now through the end of the year. So they will just populate. I bring that mainly to show you what to look for in the fall of the year, now through really Christmas. That's when they're really, really active. They really favor evergreens and aspens and apples. There's several things they like. They really like pine trees. So watch that one. So if you see a glistening underneath your Austrian pine, Scotch pine, pinyon pines, they're up in the trees, up at the tips, and they're I don't know how to put this delicately. We call that a honeydew or aphid poo. Basically, they're sucking the juice out of from the plant, and the excrement kind of glistens on your trunk of your car, on your driveway, on the rocks underneath, and it looks kind of shiny and wet. But you know you didn't water it. That's only one thing will do that. You have aphids. You should kill them. Don't let them get a stronghold, because they'll come right back at you. They'll hibernate. They'll crawl underneath the ground. They'll hibernate under the rocks and the litter at the base of the tree, and they'll come right back at you. Like in February, they come back at us. So don't let them get ahead of you. Spray them with. We're going to spray with, I think, horticultural oil. What we're going to spray these with. It's cool enough now that you can start using your oils. Completely organic. It's the least expensive, safest for your pets, for your birds, for you. Oils are really great, but you can't use them when it's hot. You got to use them when they're cool. So now aphids, this obliterates aphids and the eggs. So it coats the egg so they don't come back and basically come right back at you. So anyway, if you get a real tall tree, put your drenches down. So this is a tree and shrub drench. What this does, you mix it up in a watering can or a 5-gallon bucket, whatever you happen to have, and you pour it right at the base of the trunk of that tree and actually absorb that, take it up underneath the cambium layer, underneath the bark. You'll take it to the tips where those aphids are feeding and take them out from the inside of the tree out. Also takes out bark beetle, pinyon pine scale. One application is good for a year, protects the tree for a year. A little more expensive, a little more, you got to be a little more scientific with it. We can show you how to do it. It's pretty easy. But this is another thing you could do if it's too tall to get a spray to, drench it. Okay, so those two things are what we're looking at. All right. Okay, potentia summer. I was going over the 4 seasons: early spring, perennial, June season, summer, crepe myrtles, your butterfly bush, all those things that, Russian sage, all those things that bloom in the summer. Then you've got fall, that's where we're at now, the fall color, and then winter evergreens. Those are truly your cycle that you're seeing show up here in the mountains of here. I would say at the 3,500 foot level and above, those are the seasons that you're really seeing. It's more than just 4. And that's the cycles you'll see at the garden center, the plant rotations, the crops that we're growing. Those are the seasons we're growing for. Okay. That one is done. Let's start with, how do I do this? Let's start with the number 1. It doesn't pertain to this, but you're seeing them show up. They're all around town. This is the most famous of all the maples. Maples love growing here. They like our alkalinity, they like our clay soil, they like our wind. This is an autumn blaze or blaze maple. There's a lot of different maples. You folks from the Midwest, don't just plant any of them. Some of them get really beat up or wind tattered. The wind would get so windy it tends to tear the leaves when they're younger. They look terrible. They'll grow, they just look terrible. This is the fastest growing of the red maples. So this grows probably 2-3 feet a year. It'll easily grow, maybe more sometimes if it's happy. So it'll easily grow this much a year. But it's most famous for this color. So it's a shade tree. It's going to get up 35, 40 feet tall. 15 feet wide. I mean, it's truly a shade tree. And then it's big. What I'm noticing in my own neighborhood, like my tree is not turned yet. I'm at the top of a hill. The neighbors at the bottom of the hill, their trees have turned already in bright, full red. Why would that be? The cold air settles in the lower spots. And so that cold we had, a week ago or so, settled down in the low areas. And so it triggered those plants to go, I'm turning now. And so but on the hillsides, especially a sun-facing hill, those are warmer. Cold, warm air rises. And so those trees might be 10, 14 days behind. So in a neighborhood, you'll see this wave of color show up. The same plant can be turned at different times of the month. So they're all within a couple weeks of each other, but that's why that's happening. So that's the lesson I brought for that. Blaze maple. Every yard should have at least one. Now's the time to plant them. It's so easy. Yep. Oh, what's that? Oh, that tree, that's probably at least 7 years old. This one, five, I would say 6 or 7 years old by the trunk and stuff. So some of the bigger ones will be up in the 10, 12. The really big ones, maybe 15 years old. So we plant them in the field, grow them. So they've been at the farm for a long time. So 24-inch, it depends. I don't know. I can't pull it out of my back pocket of how old things are. I can tell you how long we've been looking at our stuff. The bigger ones are going to be in that 10, 12 years. Yeah. Yep. And there's been a shortage of plants because we have to plan 10 years ago. For 2023, we were planning in 2013. You have to guesstimate how many you think, where's the economy, what's the trend going to be? It's impossible, but you try the best you can. And so you're looking down that far, and some crops are really easy. It only takes a year or two. It's like Russian sage, that purple spiky one, that's easy. They're very inexpensive, they propagate easy, they live to the plant. Some of the other ones, you get one disease going through the crop, it can take out that entire row. So it just depends on, this is true farming. So you're kind of looking at that. Some crops are really fast. Pansies. I brought pansies. So you saw my zinnia here. I show this, I thought I saw one. I had one flower that just vaporized. Of course, it's so ugly, I just threw it on the ground probably. It's dead. This plant loves the cold. This is when you plant pansies and violas, your cool season plant. This is when you put these in, and they'll continue blooming right through next May into June. And then they don't like the heat, but that's when your zinnias take over, the summer plant. So you've got this, we're so mild that you can literally you can garden 12 months out of the year. You might have to have different plants to keep that gardening going, but you can have color 12 months out of the year. You can harvest from the vegetable garden 12 months out of the year. So right now you're planting kale, you're planting lettuce and spinach and broccoli and cauliflower. Those are things that like the cool. The flavor becomes better as it gets colder. If it's real warm, they tend to bolt, they go into flower, and they get this off flavor to it. And so same with these. That's why I brought this. It's time to plant those. If you got some things that died that look like this, pull them out, put that in, and you're set for the next 8 months. Okay. All right. The other one right here, and Ken, this is so heavy. It was just, Chris had just watered this. So this has been in color for at least a month. This is the first plant to go into color, kind of announces fall, and probably the next windstorm, this will just blow off. It'll be empty, it'll be deciduous, lose its leaves. This is flame maple. or amber maple, has that flaming red color. A lot of folks, let's see if I can show you this. This is a small leafed maple compared to, this isn't quite, compared to a big leaf maple. It's a true like maple tree, shade tree. This is as big as that leaf is ever going to get. A lot of folks move here and they want to plant Japanese maples. Japanese maples struggle here. They don't like wind. They don't like arid. They don't like aridness. They don't like alkaline. They don't like anything that we have here. But everyone wants to plant a Japanese maple. Don't do that. Plant this maple. It kind of looks the same, but it loves the heat, loves the wind, loves everything about the mountains of Arizona. And it has this first fall flush of red every pretty much 1st of October through October and 1st of November, and then it'll kind of go deciduous. Then it's a wave of plants after that. So that's the reason I brought that. It's pretty, it's red, it fits. It's like a short tree or a very large shrub. This plant will go up to easily about 15 feet tall. Usually you're seeing it multi-trunk, kind of vase-shaped, kind of growing up. We'll plant these with like chase tree. There's a tree with a blue flower at the top of it. That's a companion plant with this. Red buds. There's a heart-shaped, I'm gonna throw that on the ground. Heart-shaped leaf on a tree that's up about 15 feet tall. Usually single trunk, kind of perfectly round. Has pink flowers in the spring. That's a companion plant with this, another native kind of plant. So these are all plants that love to grow together. They like our wind, our sun, our soil. Our alkalinity is the biggest thing. So that's amber maple or flame maple. Okay. Where else? Let's just go down the line, shall we? Let me take a sip of coffee. I thought I had my coffee. Here we are. Give me just a second. I would leave Russian sage. Well, first of all, we'll start with that. That kind of ties in together with your question. So the question is Russian sage. When do I trim it back? What do I do with it? How long do I go? Right. Yeah. I would. It's a weed. It truly is a weed. So Russian sage is a blue flower, shrub about this tall, kind of vase-shaped, comes up. Mine still look pretty good. They have some color on them. They're starting to lose some foliage, but they still look good. That structure will stay there a long time. Usually I'll try to keep the landscape intact as long as I can, but eventually sometime in January, the snows have come and it just starts to beat everything up. Everything starts to lay down, starts to look mangled. That's my cue. Oh, I'm starting to get close to, I need to prune it back. Then I'll shape it. Russian sage you cannot kill, so just prune it back whenever you want. But if you could, it just looks good. Even without its foliage and flowers, it just gives you something to look at in the landscape that's texturally looks good. So I'd keep it there, but then, like you said, whack it way back or it'll take over. And then I think we keep Russian sage in the ground too long. They do not deserve to live more than maybe 7 years. Then they start to get real weedy. They start to seed everywhere. They kind of run. They get this mangy look. I think we need to dig those up and reset them. You know, for $19.99, you have a brand new one that takes you for another 10 years. It looks good and it's easier to maintain. So I tend to really, with mine right now, I'm not letting it sucker. It wants to sucker. Things are rooting really fast right now, so it wants to come up, wants to run under the ground and come up over here. I'm ripping those up once a month. Go, nope, you're not doing that. You're just stay right here. I just pull those out of the ground and I don't let it run across the yard. So I can get an extra year or two out of that by making that simple maintenance. If you just let it run, it'll tend to get overgrown and they're really easy to pop out of the ground too. Shovel, just pop it right out, put a new one in. This is another one. This is I brought this just because it's a native. This is sumac. So we have quite a few sumacs that grow here. This one, even without its foliage, it's got this real kind of antler, kind of like a buck's antlers, has that soft velvety look to it. It's very pretty with or without foliage, but it's been in color for at least a month with this bright orange foliage. That last windstorm we had Saturday blew all the foliage off. And now you just enjoy this. You can see buds right now. These are the buds for next spring. It's going to start next April. That's where the flush of new growth. And this thing will literally put on an extra 18 inches of growth. This thing will turn in from this to hunk like that next spring. So sumacs, I hardly prune these. I don't water them. I don't care for them. If they're coming up where I want them to grow, I encourage them. If they come up where I don't want to grow, I'm brutal and just move you out of the way. So this one will tend to sucker on you if you're not careful. This is called tiger eye because the foliage is gold colored. And so I plant this around my pond because ponds are typically it's either real dark, mysterious, deep, dark chocolate colors, or they're pea soup green. Either way, gold looks really good with that. And so it kind of gives you this illusion, this depth in the landscape, even around this smaller size pond. So actually, this is pretty mature. It gets maybe this tall. Sumacs get about that tall. So, yeah. I like it just because even without foliage. Another one that looks good without foliage is this one. I brought this. Again, this one's been in color forever. Been in color for a month. This is dogwood. It's got bright gold with a slight tinge of orange to it, but the stems are red. So it's really pretty in a pot by your front door with some twinkle lights on it through the holidays. It's pretty. It's even prettier without foliage than it is with foliage. Now, dogwoods, if you've grown this before, I would say at that below 6,000 foot level, likes a little bit of shade in the summer. At the higher elevations, it'll take full bright sun. Doesn't matter. It's not the cold that takes us out, it's that summer heat. So here, if you're planting it here in the Prescott, and this maybe below Groom Creek and below Highland Pines, you probably want to plant this where it's got a little bit of shade. And think in terms of June, July, when it's real hot, give it some shade then. So this grows really well underneath the shade of, let's say, pine trees. It's really bright. Or that overhang you have at the front door in a pot. Looks really handsome with foliage, but looks even better without foliage. That's another one that looks good. This is another one with red. And I brought these two things to show you. Actually, I'll do these four. These three guys go together. This one is just holiday. These two, I'll do those separate. Manzanita. Now, it's an evergreen, but it just has that bright red foliage to it, or bark to it. We've got three different varieties. The native one, the Howard McMahon, it gets really big. This one happens to be a ground cover type, so you've got some that creep this way. We've got a Panchito, which gets about hip high. So you got ground, ankle high, hip high, head high, but they all have this red bark, evergreen foliage. It's not technically fall color, doesn't quite fit this, but it sure goes well with some of these other things. And it's a native with this guy. This you'll see growing wild up in the Bradshaws, Mingus Mountain. That is Oregon grape, or Mahonia. The creeping one is the native one. So there's one that grows up about, I don't know, ankle high or so, spreads out like this. This one's a compact, gets about this tall, kind of mounting shape. This one does have fall color. If it's out in the full sun, it turns bright red. If it's in more of the shade, it'll stay green. So you'll see these plants. It is evergreen, that is, it holds its foliage right through the winter, but the foliage changes color depending on how much sun it gets. And you're seeing right here, you're seeing some of the spring flowers. That's next March's yellow flower to it. So already plants are starting to think, they're thinking next spring already. They're forming next spring's leaf and flower buds. So Mahonia, it's a native. This is silk tassel. I brought this one because it kind of looks like a manzanita. The bark isn't as red. The foliage is kind of similar. If you need a big hedgerow, want something to get bigger, I think silk tassel does better than manzanita. It's hardier. It has more forgiveness to it. You can overwater it. It still will live. This one, you overwater it, it wants to die. So this one does not like clay soil. This likes drainage, and then don't ever water it. This one can take more, has more room for forgiveness. Silk tassel is really great. Gets up about head high, thick. And if you feel the foliage, it's super leathery, kind of thick to it. So you know it's drought hardy. So it doesn't use any moisture. It's just really efficient on its moisture. This is one I would not put on a drip system. I plant it and water it by hand when you remember to. That's how hardy this plant's going to be. Nice little evergreen. And the flower's got a silk tassel bush because the flower on it's kind of this silky, tassel-y. It's a pretty thing, but you're planting it for this, that foliage. Yeah, kind of evergreens. These are evergreen, but there's some of its fall color. That's what it's going to look like here shortly. In the full sun, it'll turn into this bright orange, bright reds. Mahonia, yeah, it's real good. Real tough little plant. Can be a little weedy, so kind of control it, kind of like Russian sage. It wants to run on you. Don't let it run. Just pop it out. Just go when it wants to run. Like a snake. Take a shovel to the head. Just go, no, you're not growing that way. That's it. So the holiday plants are coming up. So you're seeing a shift right now to Christmas, holidays, all that kind of stuff. So there's 2 plants. Does not pertain to anything about this class. Just you need to know. Hollies. Yeah, hollies and Christmas. Come on, they just go together. And then we put these sleeves on them. And then when the season's over, we pop these off, and now it's for sale in spring. So it's a winter evergreen. So we're trying to make it festive. You're seeing bows on things because it's living Christmas trees. We don't sell cut trees, but we do sell living Christmas trees. We sell a lot of them. So it's just that festive, use it indoors and plant it outdoors at the end of the year. This is the #1 living Christmas tree. This is Alberta spruce, which these do go together with fall. Like these 2 guys go together, especially a bigger one. These come in different sizes. If you could plant this in having this bigger like that with some mums around it, it's pretty. Put a red bow on it at the end of the season. You've now got Christmas. Put some twinkle lights on it. Does great in containers by the front door. Alberta spruce is a great it's the slowest growing of the evergreens you could possibly want. So we'll put these many times at the front post of your door, of your front entrance, whatever that looks like, in pots, because you can plant them there and they're good for years. They won't outgrow their space. Up that back stairway, you've got those planters on either side. We'll put these in there because they just mark the planters. They don't overgrow their space. If you got really green thumbs, this is last year's growth right there. 2 inches a year. This is one you want to spend a little bit more money on this one to get the size that you want. So if you want one this size, pay more and get it because it'll take forever to get it from here to this size. So this is one that you kind of go with, the Alberta spruce holiday plant. Then I brought this just because this screams fall. It's not a shrub. This is autumn shrubs, but we put 3 colored mums together in this big cachet pot because we get bored too. And so this was just fun going, let's try that. And it turned out better than I thought. This is actually pretty good. So anyway, that is a perennial. It'll come back every year. In fact, this will rest. Here's what I do with mine. I'll leave this intact until about January. By then, the petals are still there. It has a straw color to it, but it still has this form. It's still really pretty, but it's straw colored. I like that. I'll just keep that color. I'll keep the form up. But by the middle of January, and sometime in January, we've had a couple heavy snows. It just starts to lay down. It starts to get beat up. Go, oh, you don't look so good. That's when I'll whack off my perennials. Usually that's in January or February. I just take a lawnmower, weed whacker, just whack it right back to the ground. And when you do that, by February 1, you'll start to see little green foliage coming up from the ground. It's already starting to grow starting February. Of course, it's blooming late summer, fall. Okay. All right. So I'm down there. Here we go. Here's this. St. John's wort is a true shrub. This is starting to turn color. So in another week, it'll be solid gold to orangey gold. It gets up. This is fully mature. What I like about this is it's been in bloom with bright colored, like cacti fluorescent flowers, like bright fluorescent yellows and pinks. There's several colors. Then it forms these little fruits. that after it blooms that hold, the birds love the fruit. And then the fall color, it starts to get this gold color. When it's all done, it'll just have stems, and some of the fruit will persist on there. It just kind of has this fruit on the end of these like little fireworks on the end of the branches. It's really quite pretty. Super tough, very hardy shrub for a knee-high shrub. So this one and this guy, these are two companion plants. These grow the same size. Different textures, different fall colors, different flowers. I think this flower is a little prettier. It has a fruit. This just has a long bloom cycle. Anyway, Potentia, St. John's wort is what this is called. Comes in yellow flowers, pink flowers. This is a great little plant that I don't think is promoted as much as we should in the mountains of Arizona. It's such a hardy plant for here. These two I brought just because they go together. Dunk. They're both perennial. This is heuchera. I've already mentioned it once, or coral bells. Your grandparents called it coral bells because it has a flower that comes up and kind of has this hook-shaped flower to it. Very hardy plant. Perennial, comes back year after year. So this you're really planting for the foliage. We'll have it in chocolate colors, lime green, solid green, different colors of red, burgundies. Comes a lot of different foliage colors. And they all like growing here at this elevation. They love everything about the mountains of Arizona. Yeah. You can plant it now. I plant this in my containers right now because it's so pretty. If you give it any protection at all, it will hold its foliage. If it's just exposed out there by itself, it can kind of rest underground for just a moment, and then it comes right back at it. By the end of February, this thing's going, oh, I'm growing. No, it's the new year. Let's do this. It'll start to bloom by April 1, it's starting to bloom. So it's a great little plant for here. This is Dusty Miller. It doesn't get enough play here, especially in the wild, that wildland interface, where the deer and the javelina roam. This plant animals do not eat. It's bright and cheery. It shows up in the darkest of winter nights, and it holds its evergreen. It holds its foliage. In the spring, it will get a yellow flower on it. Yellow, just gets a yellow flower. It's kind of pretty, but you're planting it for this foliage. We sell this as an annual. That is, it'll only live for a year. What I find is, in my gardens, it's a perennial. It'll go for years and years. Finally, it gets kind of overgrown. I kind of go, I'm done with you, and I'll dig it up and go, that's enough. And it still wants to come back by the roots. So, but Dusty Miller is a great little plant for here. Many times we'll plant these two things together in a raised bed or a pot, just because they go together and they enhance each other. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you. Yeah, I've got three things for you. One is, and we'll get to grasses, but I wrote an article a couple months ago on the grasses of autumn. So we grow grass, like ornamental grass, not turf, not a lawn, ornamental grass. We grow better grasses here than most parts of the country. I'll give you the top 11. It's on there. And then there was another one I had. There's grasses and the shrubs of autumn. Here's the list. It's a digital form with full-on pictures. I'll email it to you. You can read it on your iPad or your desktop, or whatever. Give me your email address, and I'll be to you by the end of the day. I'll have them out there to you, okay? And then I think how to fertilize, because it's so important to fertilize right now. I can't emphasize that enough. You should really feed everything in the yard. New things, old things, fertilize everything. Natives, fertilize everything in the yard. And you're fertilizing with the all-purpose plant food, this stuff. Put this on everything in the yard. It will make a difference how things go through winter and how they look next spring. They're going to use the food now. It's the most important feeding of the entire year right now, okay? So can you dissolve this in water and pour it in from a bucket? No. It's a true organic. So it's got like cottonseed meal things don't really dilute very well, but you can throw it right on the rock and it will melt over like 3 months. Snow and rain will just break it down slowly, and it'll go through all the rock and the fabrics down to the roots. Also, when you're fertilizing, don't focus on the trunk. Don't focus on right at the base of the plant. Focus on the drip line, so that outer branching. So if I'm the trunk of a tree, these are my branches. Focus kind of halfway out to here. That's where all the feeder roots are, not at the trunk. The only thing that's at the base of a tree are big, hairy, like big, chunky anchoring roots. The bark is so thick they can't even take in moisture and food. But the finer root hairs are out here. That's just a real quick lesson on that. This is Nandina. Californians call this heavenly bamboo. The rest of the country calls it Nandina, but it's a great little evergreen plant. This is plum passion because the foliage turns purple. The new growth is purple. Then if it's in full sun, the foliage will turn this bright purple. Very interesting purple. The regular ones like Domestica, the original one your grandparents grew, Gulf Stream, Sienna Sunrise, turn to bright red. So there's several different varieties we have here. They all do really well. And they're all evergreen, most years. And if they're in the sun, they'll turn this bright color in the autumn through winter. If they're in more shade, they'll be green, basically. So, Plum Passion Nandina. I just like the name, Plum Passion. Oh, I brought this. This one's confused. Actually, this one and this one are confused. These are winter blooming plants. We get them now. Now through the first of the year, we're still shipping. We still have loads coming in every week. And so this is camellia. We only get camellias one time a year because the ag laws, the way that they are, they're really strict. So Arizona is it's a main harvest for us. And so we're really careful on what we allow into the state and who's bringing it in and how clean they're going to be. We don't want disease coming in. So this one's got very strict orders on it. Because we're one farm in Northern California. This is a hardy camellia. Most camellias will not take our cold. This one will. This is an Ice Princess series. I think it comes in a white, kind of an apple blossom, and a pink color. Got 3 colors. It's evergreen. This is how it's going to look year round. And then you can see it's loaded up. It got cool enough where it went, oh, it's winter now. I'm budded up. I think I'll start blooming. It shouldn't be blooming yet. It should wait another couple of months, then it will be in bloom. It's the very first thing to bloom in spring or in late winter. Usually it starts blooming February. So most of these flowers will be open in February, March, April is its sequence. And so Ice Princess I brought just because you just don't see it very often. And so you only get first dibs. I've only got maybe 50, 70 of them. And when they're gone, they're just gone. There's no more of them. You only get them once a year. This is kind of I would say midday in June, not good. Put it in more shade. From full shade to morning suns. I plant this one in a pot on my back patio. So I've got a 2-story house. It's on the north side. So in the summer, it's pretty shaded. It gets morning sun, and then it gets at the end of the day, it's pretty hot sun. When it gets that sun, it loves it. It just loves it there. So this one would do really well in that let's say in a pot in that overhang over your house, or everyone's got a portico or something this one would love growing in a container like that. Does not get that big. So most camellias are a little bit bigger flower, and it's a bigger plant. If you've grown camellias, they're almost like a tree. This one stays short. So it's only going to get about chest high. You could easily keep it down to hip high, maybe a little bit lower, 3-4 feet, and it would do really well. This is another one. We normally don't get this until February. This is Lenten Rose, or what's the botanical? My brain's going numb here. Hellebores. Hellebores, yeah, or Lenten Rose. Those are 2. Hellebores is a Latin name. So this is an evergreen perennial. Looks like this year round, and it blooms in the winter. It's just confused. It's starting to bloom. It's going to be blooming now through March probably. That's a beautiful perennial. Okay, we're almost done here. No, we're right on time. Yeah. Spirea. Spireas are deciduous. That is, they'll lose their leaves. The beautiful thing about spirea is they got beautiful fall color. It's red, so this will probably be in color for another, month or so. Has pink flowers in the spring, so it gets up about knee-high, kind of ball shape, just perfect little shape to it. You don't hardly have to do anything to it. Animals do not like to eat this. So rabbits, deer, javelina, pack rats, they don't bother this at all. Blooms in the spring. It's got just a cute little, it looks delicate, but it's not. Takes full sun, takes the wind, takes abuse, and it's got pretty fall color, spireas. Anyway. And then this is probably the most famous. This just started turning that last cold we had. It's got them turning all around town. You're seeing this shrub about this high that's bright, bright red. That's burning bush. That's what this is. So you can see it's just got a little tinge of red on it. So it got a little bit of cold on the top, another couple of cold nights, and the whole thing will turn this, not this color red, like bright, like fire engine red. It's just starting. So it gets up chest high or so, pretty easy. If you want to keep it down lower than hip, probably not worth the energy. Let it go naturally to this high and it'll be easy to grow for you. Less maintenance to it. But this is full sun, right out there, and surrounded with rock, radiant heat. It's going to like it. So and then it's most famous for its fall color, burning bush, like burning red. And then interesting, the stems are really interesting. So a lot of florists will harvest the stems and just kind of use them in arrangements and stuff. So you'll start to see around the holidays, they're using burning bush branches in the decorations. Done that one. Let's show you this one. This one and this. Let's do these two. I brought this. So this is crepe myrtle, and a question often comes up. Let me take a sip of coffee here, wherever that went. I should keep better track of that. There you are. Okay. How are we doing? Okay. Okay. Crepe myrtle has been in bloom for 2-3 months. It's a summer bloomer. It likes to bloom starting July through the fall of the year. So this one's still got a little bit of color on it, but it's pretty much done. It's starting to have this fall color to it, this purpley kind of gold to it. But the reason I bring this is not for the fall color. It's got that. Gets up about, this high or so. But these seed heads, they tend to confuse folks. What do I do with these? Should I prune them off? Should I keep them on? What do I do? I think they're kind of pretty, so I leave them on my bush. And then in usually February, March, I'll take my hands and kind of go and just go, done. Now I'm pruned. We're done. If it needs a haircut, I might trim it a little bit, give it kind of shape it just so it grows evenly. I've even had these in containers in my front door, and I'll spray paint the seed heads like red or Christmassy green or whatever. You can have fun with it. So I tend to be kind of an artist sometimes. My tomato cages, they're not galvanized. They're yellow, they're red, they're blue, they're pretty, they're art pieces over my tomatoes. I'm having fun with gardening, so I'm thinking outside the box, and you can do that with this. You can leave the seed heads on or you can take them off. It doesn't care. Either way, whatever bothers you or makes you happy, do that. The seeds they're not going to come up in the yard. They're just there to be, I think that's a pretty interesting thing that crepe myrtles do. The seed heads are just fun. Another question I get from my southern folks, can I get a crepe myrtle tree? Another one would be a fig. Can I get a fig tree? And the answer is no. They don't grow in tree form here. What happens is we'll get a real cold winter that resets plants about every 10 years or so. So in fact, we almost get cocky. We're going, it's turning into a tree. Ken was wrong. I'll show him. Gardeners. I never tell the gardeners what they can or can't do because they'll prove you wrong. We'll start to grow into a tree, and then we'll get this really cold, single-digit, sub-zero winter. It stays there for like a week or two, and it just burns everything back to the ground. And then crepe myrtles will come back from the ground, and so they turn into, we'll see beautiful shrubs. You rarely see a tree. And that's the reason why. Winter's resetting them back to the ground every 10 years or so. Same with fig trees. So we've got some hardy figs, like Phoenix has fig trees, like full-on trees. Here we have fig bushes, because frequently they'll hibernate underground, come back fresh. And literally, fig will grow 5 feet in 1 year and be loaded with figs. Same thing. You don't see trees here because it resets in the winter, comes back fresh every spring from the ground. That's the reason why. That's the reason I brought this two things. Trees, we don't have them here. And then seed heads, what do I do? Now you know what to do with your crepe myrtles. Grasses, two things here, and then we're kind of done. We'll take some Q&A. So again, I'll send you a list. And I think if you're tuned in online, we just put that link on the right-hand side. Just click that. It takes you to the website where that article is. And you'll see you'll see all of that. So we're not leaving you out. We know you're tuned in. We want you almost have first dibs. That's to wait for the email. You got it right there. But we're famous for our grasses here. And you don't have to plant that monster pampas grass. I would never put that in my own yard. It's too big. It's too aggressive. I just don't want to prune something that's sharp as razor blades. You look like you've been in a cat fight every time you even touch this thing. It is pretty, but they're short-lived. They're only going to live 7-10 years at most. Then they die out in the center. They have this long death cycle that they do. They're high maintenance. You have to prune them back from this all the way back to the ground every year. And so they're hard to prune. A lot of your smaller grasses are super easy because now you can take a lawnmower, a weed whacker, and just kind of go, yeah, done for the year. I'm all set. All grasses need to be cut back to the ground or thereabouts. You'll see different heights to them. So pampas grass goes back to about 18 inches. Most things are going to be in that lower 6 inches or so. Whatever your lawnmower or weed whacker, I take hedgers. Hedgers kind of go as low as I can and go, I'm done. From blue lime grass to overdam grass to bunny grass, they all need to be reset. But they all grow really well. They're all perennials. The reason you're cutting them back every year, if you don't, they'll have this beautiful autumn red color, beautiful fall color. It's going to turn to straw, but then if you don't cut it back, it's going to grow back with green interbred with this brown. So you get this dead and green all in the same plant. It kind of looks off. Just cut off the brown, have all fresh new plant come back every spring, whether it's coral forester grass, which is a great one. Just cut back your grasses, except for one. One you don't do that with. Bear grass, like B-E-A-R, bear, like roar, bear grass. That one is our native grass. It grows out in the prairies. You'll see a grass, almost looks like a yucca. Has this green foliage to it, has a white flower to it. That one you just take the flower stem off, but you keep the evergreen foliage intact. Don't cut it back. So that's the native one, so it's bear grass. Everything else, I'm trying to make sure I don't make a mistake on this. I think everything else you cut back, okay? This is called overdam grass. This has this bright red to it. It's a blue-stemmed grass. It's been in bloom for 2 months or more, and then it'll turn to straw-colored grass, and you just whack it back to just like here or so. And that's all you do. Fertilize it in March, comes back fresh every single year. This one I brought, it doesn't pertain, but it's the #1 selling yucca. This is red yucca. So this is the last stem. It'll probably be in bloom until probably another 2 weeks, maybe. Then once it gets cold enough, it'll just shut down. This one is evergreen. You don't prune back your foliage. Don't let your landscapers cut this back like a grass. It'll take years to recover. This, you keep the foliage intact. You simply take this and pinch it off, cut it off, and then you leave the rest of the foliage intact, okay? So the other secret I could tell you with this, when you're fertilizing, you'll see how this structure, the foliage of these natives, they're very smart. They're funnel shaped, so they're actually looking to pull in moisture, rain, and snow to the heart of the plant. So everything is coming to the heart of the plant. So it's rain harvesting is what it's doing. It's bringing this foliage, the foliage bringing all the rain and moisture to it. When you're fertilizing, be really careful. You don't want to just fertilize like this because it'll bring all that fertilizer, which can burn, to the heart of the plant. Now you just dumped like a handful of fertilizer right there. With these kind of plants, I'm real careful to go underneath the foliage and I sprinkle it underneath, so I'm not going to have that I'm working with the structure of the plant, not against it. I just made a mistake before where I burned out the heart of the plant and it didn't recover. It was very hard. It just hurt me. I don't want that for my students here in the class. I want better for you than what I'm used to. Anyway, cut this off. Watch how you fertilize. This is red yucca. All your yuccas, treat them the same way. They're all evergreen, mostly. And so they'll be good plants for here. With that, I think we're done with the class. Look for a couple handouts. I'll take some Q&A questions if you got anything online, take a moment before you ask a question. We'll let you go first. Do me a favor and hit the like, whatever format you're subscribing to, just hit the like. It really helps us out because like Google's our friend with 5-star reviews and more likes. And we don't have as much advantage as Home Depot and Lowe's and those other big guys. That really helps us out to get noticed. So with that, yes, Ken. Gina. Fruit trees, okay? Yeah, so great question. So Gina, very, very good. So let's just reiterate that for folks in the class. Fruit trees, if I had frost cover on them to protect them from that frost we had, should I leave that on from now on? No, don't do that. First of all, your plants need the sunlight. So that frost cover, it's usually a white sheet you put over top of. It's a breathable material. It's usually white. And so the sun can't get through it. The frost can't get through it either, which is good. But that plant needs the sunlight. So let it go through its natural cycle. Now, unless we're dealing with things like citrus, avocados, things that are desert dwellers, that frost cover will get you to the end of the year, and then eventually it's not thick enough to protect the heart of that plant. It's a tropical plant that's not going to survive the winter. The only way to save those is to bring it indoors or in a greenhouse or store it someplace where we don't get below 32. Most of your apples, pears, cherries, apricots, nectarines, peaches, the things that we grow up here, they're going to go through this natural cycle, and they need the cold. So they have what we call chilling hours. They need so many nights of cold, and at hour 750, it goes, okay, I've had enough cold. It is now spring, bloom. So they actually have a counter. They actually get like a tick mark. They just go, okay, there's another hour of cold, another hour of cold. After so many hours of below 32, they bloom. And so we're trying to get fruit trees that have real late or high chilling hours. So we want 700, 800, 1,000 chilling hours. So those plants will wake up, will bloom, usually end of March, April, May. So we're out of that frost cycle. The desert varieties, they want it to bloom really soon because they want that thing to fruit before the heat of summer. So they'll have fruit trees that are 200-300 hours. Make sure you got the right fruit tree. There's a whole class on that coming up next spring when it's time to do that. But I'm guessing you've got an actual fruit tree that grows up here. Take the frost cover off. You're good. Let it do its fall color thing. It's going to go deciduous. In fact, I had a customer right before the class brought in wanted to know what that peach tree was. It was already budding up with peach buds. So the flowers for next spring were already starting to form. So let it go through that cycle. You'll be fine. Take it off. Anyone else? Questions? Yep. Yucca. Oh, gotcha. So the question is the yuccas in general, how robust are they against things like gophers and javelina? So the way yuccas work, they have a real fleshy root structure to them. This is very nutritious, like lots of starches, and yeah, they can eat the heart of it. They'll leave it alone for years, and all of a sudden we'll go into this drought cycle, and they'll start getting desperate for moisture. It's had a lot of moisture and food. They're a normal source. If we're out of this drought cycle, probably you're fine to plant it, and it'd be fine. But I have heard some customers here having to come in and dig them up and eat the root. Not so much the plant, the roots. Same with gophers. Gophers come underground. They love the taste of yuccas. Gophers are an underground rat. All rats deserve to die. Kill them. Don't let them eat their yuccas. So that's kind of, yeah, I wouldn't tempt them. You're probably better with bear grass. There's some other choices. The silk tassel, they're not going to bother us. Manzanita, they're probably better choices if you've got those kind of issues. They'd be better choices for you. Yeah, great. Apache plume. Yeah, there's a bunch of them you can play with that they won't bother. Yep, great questions. Anyone else? With that, I will hang out as long as you want and come look at the plants, and I'll just be here. Thanks for being here, and then look for an email from me shortly. I heard someone heard the radio show. Thank you very much. How many others have heard the radio show before? Okay, thank you. So half the class. I'll send a link. Could you help me remind me? Maybe the podcast link? So if they could actually listen to the show. So I create 6 segments for the radio towers. So I've done seven different towers throughout northern Arizona, broadcasts all over northern Arizona. And I stitch those together in an hour-long radio format. So the podcast every week is the radio show for that week. And now you can listen to it whenever you want on your phone or on your computer, wherever. So I'll send you that link as well. So if you missed out, thank you for tuning in. If you did tune in, and if you didn't, it's me in person only on the airwaves. It's even better. With that, I'll let you clap, and then I'll let you go. I'll just be here for you. Thanks, you all. Yeah, on the crepe myrtle, on the camellias.